Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Talk the Walks session 3. Today's session is going to be very interesting for all the leaders who are watching us live or the YouTube. The session is about culture and managing changes in organizations. So to enter the topic, let me first introduce what I feel about culture. From the point you enter to an office, from the door, from the onset, to the decision-making rooms, from the executives, and the walls, the corporate colors, how people talk, how people walk, how people collaborate, teamwork, all this about culture. There's a saying, culture is everywhere in organizations. The question is, what's the leader's role in encouraging the culture or discouraging the culture? How does it impact the performance of the organization? Does it help or does it have adverse effect? To answer these questions, I bring two very prominent, excellent leaders of Sri Lanka, two entrepreneurs in their own style. Let me, without further ado, introduce the two entrepreneurs here onto my right. Dr. Harsha, who I call is an educationist, involved in education from childhood to the adults, having international schools, trainings and vocational training centers, got universities involved. He himself is qualified in a different aspect than what he's doing today. Let him explain about who he is. Then to my rightmost, I have Chandi, is another different character. He's also qualified in completely different area. If I'm right to say, I think he's aeronautics or aircraft. And today he's running a big business, which is a multinational, thousands of employees. He's also very interested and passionate about driving cultures. That's the two leaders we have. Let me first ask them to introduce themselves. Dr. Alwis, why don't you just brief us? What's your background, education, what were you passionate when you were studying, your teenage, and then come to your work experience and what you're doing right now?
Well, professionally, I'm a medic. I was lecturing in the Colombo Medical School for a number of years. So in a sense, when people ask me, I say I'm a doctor gone wrong. About education, probably with the influence at home, both my parents being teachers and educators, obviously I had that exposure from a very young age. But I think I'm just listening to Anura and realizing that Chandi is also coming from a different sector. I believe that is something that I see very often now, and I'm really encouraged to see that. And even when I talk to my students, I say it's good for someone to qualify from one area and move on to another area, because you take a lot of new thinking. You're not trained to think in a very traditional manner. I think that has helped me where education is concerned. And I think if you find your passion wherever you are, that's where you should be. And that's the reason I believe I'm in education.
I have a question to you before I go to Chandi. Maybe this is not something revealed. You have a PhD. What's your PhD?
Again in medicine. Basically, I did a lot of research in malaria. While being an academic in the Colombo Medical School, I got a WHO grant, and that's how I kind of completed my PhD. Well, even in medical school, I enjoyed my work, but as a lecturer, I believe you got to be engaged in research. And for a number of years, in fact, I was doing both, working at Gateway as well as working in the medical school. But when it came to a point where I could manage my time, and especially when I could devote enough time for research, I thought I need to quit.
Okay. All right. I have a few more things coming up, and also there are questions coming online, but I'll just move to Chandi and come back. Chandi.
Yeah. So, like you said, I started in terms of education. Actually, I finished off being a mechanical and manufacturing engineer. So, aeronautics side came out of pure passion of just wanting to fly. I think the whole synopsis of that is, you like something and you start doing it, and then you realize you can do a lot more better in other things that you go with. So engineering was my passion. I got into apparel quite by chance. I loved it, and obviously from that I moved on to value addition in apparel, because I think that was a lot more challenging. So the true part of where I like to be today is that in terms of where I am, is that I'm doing what I enjoy the most, and I think we have in terms of technicalities and the other things. It involves, like Dr. said, you take a lot from what you have gained and you apply it to the current job and the business that you are. So we evolved with time in terms of I'm personally and with the team. The growth that I see in terms of this is, I think, a lot more challenging than what I could have been doing as an engineer. So that's my take.
Okay, I ask you a question. Is that true that you're in the right field?
Yeah.
Do you believe that you made the right choice? Because at some point you want to join the Air Force.
Yeah, that kind of came, did a few, but I kind of realized that was not probably. I'm
glad you're not there.
Yeah.
Just come back before I go to the real questions. Dr. Alwis back. As a leader, this is an interesting question I ask in different styles. As a leader, what keeps you wake up at night? Is there anything that you concern? I'm not about the current problems. If this is my passion, this is something, if I don't see this keeps me wake up.
Wake up at night, I believe, should happen only if we have problems. I sleep little, but I think I sleep well, because at the end of the day, most days, I think I end the day by being happy. But try to wake up with something new, and that's something that I think for a number of years I've been practicing. You know, when you work in an organization, people like to see things happening, especially your colleagues, maybe parents and students as well. But I think looking for new ideas, listening to people, trying to bring something new is something that kind of gives a lot of energy to the organization as well as the people whom you work with.
Yeah.
And so basically looking back about our organization, we've been doing various things, and I'm sure that's what has kept me going.
Right. Chandi, don't worry, I'm not asking the same question, but ask a different, interesting question. What keeps you losing your hair?
I think the whole we imply sort of, you know, where we want to be tomorrow. Every day it's about planning to be tomorrow, and like the doctor said, that it's doing those changes that the organization demands, and also your colleagues would see a different angle to it, and accommodating that, and then making sure that the rest of the team down the line also will endorse it, and it brings a new meaning daily to getting to work and doing something constructively than their usual routine work. So I think that's what, you know, if I keep losing my hair, and also in terms of P&L, it also costs. So that's the part that really loses your hair. But then that's something that the business has to sustain and to continue.
Okay, great entry. Then I'll start with a fundamental question from you, Chandi, to make a difference. There is three different levels of culture that you find basically in organization: physical thing, and then the espoused level, which is talking about values and beliefs of the organization, of the leader, and the third level is what people think. Now I'm going to the first one, the artifact level, which is people see entering into your organization. I have two faceted questions. Do you think your corporate culture that you drive, in terms of how you treat people, how you recruit people, how you grow people, how you run the company, does it reflect in your how the environment physically look like? And the second question is, what is it that you drive in a one sentence that you want to say, this is what I drive as my culture?
I think yes, in terms of entering the business, on the physical aspect of it, it starts, like I always tell my team, it starts with the guy who actually opens the gate, like at home. You open the door, you welcome somebody with a smile. Our businesses have constantly people coming in and going out. So it starts at the guard room, where somebody is a lot more courteous, and it's obviously, I think I'm most critical of all of them who walks in and says, okay, in the morning this is what it should be, in the afternoon the same greeting has to be there. Come walking into the organization, at least at the front end level, we have to be completely accommodative to whoever walks at whatever whatever level of social standard that they walk in, everybody should be welcome in the business, and that will drive a different positive brand for a business. In terms of the people part of it, I think the actual drive starts when you also start talking about it and you also start acting that way. And you have to be, I think, at the inception, when you start something or you're starting to establish a different sort of thinking, you will have to be the sole person who drives it, and then everybody else will start to follow that. And hopefully there will be few people who will take that as a key and start driving it themselves. Then you can take a step back, because it will actually, it's like, it will get infectious. And I think that's how our organizations or our businesses will start, like I said, in the guardroom right down to the end. So even if a shopper walks in and sends anybody else, they have to be actually the most happiest when they actually at senior level, because that's automatically going to happen in our culture.
Let's walk. Tell me example, when you think that this is what the people believe and this is what the culture, and there is a difference. Do you have any example to share with the group how you changed that? How you impacted the organization growth?
Okay. In this organization, we had a different model in terms of our customers, and we wanted to extend a different partnership to different businesses in Sri Lanka, a particular level of brand. I'm talking about the high street brands in the US and Europe. And then we wanted to look at whether we can expand that. And I think there was a lot of questions within the team that says, you're going to go out of that comfort zone, your DNA looks good, why would you don't need to do that? And that was something that I had to painstakingly sort of ask myself also, because sometimes you think of it and you think you're the only one who wants to drive it. Everybody else thinks it looks good on paper, but it's not going to work practically. So what we did was, or what I had to do was to get the team and constantly keep asking them for their views. If we are to go on this route, what would you do? So take me out of it. And actually, what happened was I found a leader within that I could work with, and they actually are the ones who drove that. So it wasn't actually me who actually did it. It was actually everybody else. And there are a few people who led that. And I think my greatest learning from that was a lot of patience, because it takes a bit of time, a bit more time than what you have put as a plan to get there. And that does actually affect how the rest of the team will actually start it, which is at the inception of our business, or at the inception of me starting at this organization. So that was the learning was that everybody else started to endorse it after some time, and suddenly you could find leaders emerging out, and I actually was following them. So now it's just a norm that it naturally happens there.
Doctor, I turn to you with a very different question. So UIC as an educationist, I think is the right probably category, even though you're coming from a different medical background. So being a chairman of a international, when I say international, not the international schools in terms of international organization, global, you have two different staffs or the memberships in the organization. One side is the teachers or the administrators, the other side is basically the students. And it could be adult or it could be children in schools. And you have different, like I said, if I'm not mistaken, Bangladesh, England, Sri Lanka, and also within Sri Lanka you have two different education models. So, as a corporate leader, can you drive a single culture, or are you driving different cultures? And is it by design, or is it how you want to run?
I think the culture is something that is very precious, as it was brought up earlier. And I don't think you can have different cultures within the same organization. It's got to be the same thing. I mean, we all have to speak the same language, and students obviously will follow what they hear from us. So overall, be it staff or students, we try to maintain that same culture. And in maintaining that culture, I think what we've kind of want to do and what we've hopefully done is, I always say, I'm a believer of this God genus, who looks forward and who looks back. There's a lot for us to get by looking back, and especially with my organization, the founder being Carlos, my father, who had a certain vision for education, where he believed in very strong values and getting that foundation for the students. So that is something that we need to continue, take it forward. But looking forward, the world is changing. We obviously have to see what is happening around us, though we are a school, and we got to be progressive. And in many ways, I tell my colleagues, look here, even if we are a school, we have to act like a corporate. And those systems, the kind of forward thinking has to come in if we are to be a successful organization, even though we are in education. So what I say is, okay, let us function like an educational establishment with strong values, good culture, with respect to one another. But where the culture is concerned, question mark whether we want to have that corporate culture, and that's where we got to be very careful.
Okay. So that leads to a second question on the same subject. You said quite nicely that it has to be, as a leader, have a corporate. I think what you're saying is same value set. Then the next question is that you dealing with, in Sri Lanka, two different education segments. When I say government versus international or the kind of English syllabuses, can you when teaching and when it comes to education, is it possible what you said?
Well, I mean, there are certain aspects that you got to understand. Now we have a chain of kindergartens in the UK. I mean, if I go and try to do what I do in Sri Lanka, obviously that won't work. So you have to understand their own culture and kind of make your adjustments. But the core is basically, if you tell any employee whom we recruit, I mean, so far I must tell you, every single teacher that joins Gateway, be it Chandi, Nigambu, Dehiwala or wherever, I'm there for the final interview. I don't know how sustainable it is, but I make sure that I be there. And one thing that I say is, if you join Gateway, there are two very important things. You got to be proud of the work that you do, and you got to be happy. The day you feel that you cannot be proud of the work you do, or you cannot be happy, that's the day you need to move out. So that's one message I give every single recruit. So by that, I think whether it is UK, Maldives or Sri Lanka, we give one message, and that message obviously puts a framework where the culture is concerned.
Right. So I have now taking a question from the online question coming. I think audience will ask who to go this question with. The question is, what is the biggest challenge in changing an organization? How best can you tackle that? I think it's asking your example as well as your experience as well as in general. So who do you want to go that with? Dr. Alwis or Chandi? Sorry?
Mr.
Chandi, question to you. You're looking out thinking that it will not come to you.
I know. Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is, like I said, being through it, and I think we continuously do this in our businesses, is actually time. When you want to, when you think change is there or adapting to something else, you're really pushing it. I think from a senior level, you want things done a bit more faster than people who actually can practically do it. So time has been the biggest challenge. With that, I think the actual mental sort of readiness of the rest of the team has to be judged. And sometimes I think I walked in a bit too fast and not realizing that others are probably are not in tune. and sometimes obviously that's when tensions rise. But then you have to take a step back because you are convinced that you want to do it. And I think the biggest challenge is trying to get others convinced. But I think when others do, the challenge is giving that space for them to absorb it and for them to execute it. So that's for me the biggest challenge is the time factor.
Okay, maybe this question I'll put to Dr. Alwis. I think this was something answered, but I'll bring it up because for the benefit of the question. How does the national culture impact on international business? For example, customs, celebrations, value systems, etc. I think talking about, we have examples of Vesak, and we have Muslim and we have multinational and country. We have all aspects of races. So the question is, can you force that? Can you write that? Is it possible? I know you answered this, but I thought I'll bring that anyway because there was a side about Sri Lankan values.
How it impacts it?
No, how do you, when you engage, like you have, for example, a good example is Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. So, if you say this is a holiday, this is how you celebrate, this question is about. And you can't do that in Bangladesh. Maybe something that you do in Bangladesh, maybe fasting or whatever, you can't do that here. There are some legal systems may not allow. That's a question.
If I understood correct, basically, I think this culture, values, you must kind of take those things very positively. I think talking about Sri Lanka, this diversity we have, being a multicultural, multiracial, multi-religious organization, I think there's a lot of richness. So you got to kind of take it as it is. I don't think we should complain. I don't think there's anything to complain in the first place. Because as an organization, what I always discuss with my colleagues is, as a country, we are used to getting a lot from the West. Whether you studied in the local system or an international school, the fact is we have heavy influences coming from the West. But we got to understand and appreciate that the world is changing, and it's now time to look both left and to the right. And also look back again, as what I say is about our own history and the culture that we have had in our country. So kind of these things, if we kind of give that message, especially now in a school, where you have children of all religions, all races, that's a fantastic thing to have. And I think being an international school, though I studied in a boys only school, having girls and boys, I think that's also a huge strength. So you must use kind of these things to the maximum and create that environment where people kind of respect and enjoy the culture, the values of one another, and bring that richness into the organization.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And let's move on with some of the bullets I have. This question is about the organization measurement of culture. The question is that from me, there are different ways that you can look at engaging with your school or the staff, and in your case is all staff. How do you engage? Like, what kind of mechanism are you having for this audience to share with? I know both of you have more than 2,000 or 3,000 of altogether, at least nearly 5,000. How do you engage with them? How do you take the feedback? What mechanisms you take feedbacks of what you do as a leader, whether you're right path or wrong path? I'll first go to Chandi.
Obviously, from a manufacturing sector, engagement is very key, right from the top, right to the bottom, even at a very associate level or one of our junior team members should be able to approach anybody in the business. And if you take what I do, would on a normal day would walk around any business that I'm there for that day and at least ask them how they're doing, smile with somebody a bit more distantly, and you should be able to judge whether they're actually smiling, with happiness of seeing you, or whether they have any other queries in it. And sometimes what I can catch is at breakfast when they all sit for lunch or even at tea. Walk around, sit in anybody's table and just have a chat. You actually get a lot more feedback about their mental being in the business. And also, of course, we have different tools on HR level where they give weekly feedbacks about different matters that has come. We have boxes where people can put their comments on. We are just starting on a software where they can put any of their comments obviously without being identified. So all of that actually you have to take into your stride and get all that feedback, but never. What I've learned also is that you don't, just because somebody has something negative or something positive, you just don't go and blur it out in a public forum in the business. Because sometimes some people don't really want you to know everything. So you have to know everything, but not probably use that information to go and publicize it, but use that in a way that will engage them with you a lot more.
So you talked about engagement and talk about you get feedback. I want to understand give an example, the feedback that you got and what you made different and how it impacted them.
As an example, just last week I was walking and it's very trivial. It was still very trivial for me, but the time that, on the second, for the week, I think on the second day, everybody got, for breakfast, everybody got the same sambal that they thought was made on a Sunday and was distributed across one plant on a Tuesday and a Thursday. So, somebody was talking to me, I'm a vegetarian, so they keep telling me there aren't enough vegetables even for you. So I said, okay, right. So we went for breakfast and obviously it was okay, but for some it probably wasn't. But then it took us literally a day for us to talk to the kitchen, and I called the guys and I asked them what. The thing is, they keep using some ingredient on it, it tastes the same. And the feedback that I got beyond that was actually, it was also that, but also about the timing in terms of the breakfast that we had, the actual time that we have in this particular plant, and they actually would like to have breakfast as soon as they get into the plant rather than halfway through the break, so that was the actual, the hidden message in that. But then they started the conversation a bit more in a different way. But the key was that the timing on it. So that was for me. I know I'm doing HR license, I see for the things like that. But then to me that was a very good thing, because it actually also will improve the productivity of the business, where you don't really stop the process for a break.
Halfway.
Yeah.
Doctor, turning with the same question, because I think engagement and feedback is really, really important for a leader to, whether it's how you recruit or how you grow, how you deal, how you talk, how you message, communicate. What kind of, the same question goes, because important to know the audience, what kind of tools and techniques you use, and how do you bring that feedback to your organizations? Again, it might be, I know it's very difficult because you have different side of customers to deal with.
Yeah, I think, Chandi mentioned about time. I think that's the biggest challenge that I think anyone would have in a kind of a growing organization, because, when you expand a little, your time is distributed, then that becomes a problem for sure. You see, in our school network, there are various events almost on a daily basis in different schools, and invariably, I get invited to come for this, then that can be done, sometimes even for a small religious function or whatnot. But it becomes a real challenge, but then I think it's a good sign that people still want you to come, right? And even to see a game of maybe basketball. So as much as possible you try to create time for yourself to attend those things, because those are the opportunities you have to engage with your staff, with your students, and I wish definitely we had more time. But I think the little time you have, if you train yourself to, as he said, that smile is important, talk to them and also listen to them. because the worst thing that can happen in an organization is to stay in the office. Because when you go out, even in a school, the principals have to do rounds. When you go out, you learn a lot more than staying in your office and maybe even reading or doing some research. So that engagement is very, very necessary, in my opinion, whatever the organization is.
What kind of feedback you get and how do you apply it? Example.
When you go and talk to people, and when you kind of have that discussion where you're like one-to-one and your colleague is free to kind of tell anything, you have to absorb all these comments, okay? And sometimes if you don't do that, that information will never come. So my experience is, again, I'm going back to where I started, because I don't come from this a strictly educational background. Probably I've also developed this mindset of trying to listen and learn from people, and many ideas, I would say 99%, come from others, and so that's a good opportunity.
Right. So I'll go to a different question, which is more theoretical now. In the studies, they find there are different factors that are influencing the maintaining a great culture in organizations. Example, history, how the organization began, the primary function, what it delivers, and the technology it uses. And then it talks about strategy, the business strategy, what you want to do, where you want to go, and the size of the organization, the number of employees, members of the organization, the location of the business, which geographical location it runs, and the management and the leadership that you hire, and finally the environment, which is basically statutories, the government policies, type of things. So if you were to pick up two things that influence your business, doctor, out of the things like history, primary functions, strategy, size, location, management, and the environment that you operate, which are the two factors you pick up out of those as influencing your business?
I think I'll find it difficult to point at two, but I think they all are very important. To begin with, the history, as I mentioned, you have a certain value set, you have a certain culture that you have inherited, which you must kind of nurture and take it forward. But I think whatever the government influences are, basically we have to accept the fact that we are in a changing world, and environment bringing in those necessary changes are very important. And so where our organization is concerned, this is where we have a lot of young staff as well, and they bring in a lot of new ideas. So we kind of come up with this thing where we are now really working on the second and the third tier of people, and I find that they bring in a lot of good ideas, and though we have senior people managing, I think many of these ideas that come from the second and third tier, we want to bring forward and implement those necessary changes.
All right. Chandi, the same topic but a different question. What two factors you think when you took over the organization influencing the culture out of the history, all that mentioned? I'll repeat them. History of the organization, primary function that it offers, the size of the organization, strategy that it was in place, location of the operation geographically, the management that was existing, and the environment it operates. Basically, again, environment refers to statutory, business environment laws, type of thing. What were the two factors you had when you took over, and what are the factors you think now it's influencing?
I think, like Dr. said, I think most of those, every factor is important. Also, the fact is that you really don't have a choice when you take something like that on. You have to deal with it. For me, the key thing was not to burden the challenges that I had with them with the rest of the team. Because the team had to endorse what we were going to do, and it was their primary function to do that, and I had to deal with everything else that comes with it. If I look at it now, maybe the greatest factor was trying to retain the team that we took on board, because they had probably different view of who's coming on board, the team that is coming on board. Because we only took, in this case, we only took only a few senior people with us and infused them into the business. And the plan was never to remove the existing. If I look at like a scoreboard, I still have all the senior guys who were there when we took over, who now work actually, I think, on a different platform than what they were. So key factor that is probably the management that was there, and the management that we changed, the same management that we changed, or the thinking that we changed.
There's nothing changed in terms of the influencing factors today?
In terms of the influencing factors, yes. In terms of we brought in some new team members at different level. Like I said, it probably doesn't happen at a senior level, but the other tiers, they bring in or they push those changes, and it's up to those managers or senior managers to accommodate it, than trying to put a lid on. And that's what we have to be now careful, whether they are comfortable or not, that it actually does surface. If not, you don't. I think at large organizations, these happen. Suddenly, you get to know after about a whole season that things have come and it's died naturally. But I think in this case, you have to keep asking the question at the other second tier. What are their thoughts? Did it come up? It was not brought to me or the senior level. And what has happened then? So, the influence will be at that second tier where the changes are required, the thought processes. I now keep saying crazy works, so I keep saying, bring crazy ideas. If you see anything, if you feel anything, bring anything crazy, I am accepting it. So then down the line it has to be endorsed and taken. So the most influencing factor would be the new tiers or the second levels that we have brought into the business.
Right. So, as always, it's normally when something really happening, it's the most difficult thing is something goes wrong. So my technology went wrong and I lost my connection. So if there's anything, so let me connect now directly to the audience, because rather than going online, let's have face to face. Any questions from the audience you want to bring before I go? Because I think we need to interact. That's why you guys are here. So my network failure may be a good opportunity.
Now we talk about values, and we all know that values do play a great role in creating these cultures. But how do you see with these newcomers, young people coming in? So do they think it as a kind of baggage that is coming with the organization, or how they accept it, whether they accept it or whether what's their feeling about it? Because we know that change is what is permanent, and we see now things are changing very fast. So with that pace, so how do you see that value set? Should it be a kind of a thing which is static, or should it be very dynamic? Or how do you feel it and how do you see
it? So basically, I fully understand. I mean, an example, we face it on a daily basis. The youngsters today have huge influences, and very unfortunately, the influences are from technology. And as schools, I think the biggest challenge we have is the influences coming from social media and technology. But I think I've realized there is no point in telling a youngster today, this is what we did and you should do that today. They can't even relate to that. Okay, sometimes we say, we used to travel like this, we had only these comforts, even with my probably nephew and niece. If I say that, so that's not our problem. Okay, so you got to understand, the kind of situation that they are faced with, and work along. In the sense, now you must probably use technology to counteract that as well. So in a school, if we are very backward and not doing anything with regards to what is happening around the world, obviously the children would get very frustrated. So while you give that to the children, you also have to kind of really stick to your basics and make them understand that these are things that are very, very important. So example, I must be honest, being respectful, right? Because these kids inherit a lot from what they see on TV, whatever. So, sometimes you have to make the point. Say, look here, when a teacher walks into the classroom, you have to stand. Okay? And, make it even a rule. Not that it doesn't happen, but, that kind of constant reminders are given. Because you have to kind of give what they want, plus at the same time make sure that you make them understand that this is our country. There is, and especially for us, when we teach an international curriculum, to make them understand that if they cannot relate to what is happening back home, there's no point. If you don't mind,
go ahead.
Very recently, I had a chat with a top corporate head, and he said basically, look here, he said, that he's pleased with what is happening at Gateway, but he said, the daughter goes to a particular school, right, an international school, and his thinking about international school students they are like Alsatian dogs, okay, that they have all the skills, they are brought up very well, but if the gate is open and they run to the road, they get knocked out. Okay? And I thought that was a lot of food for thought. And I went to all 4 schools. I go on and off and address schools. And in every assembly I mentioned that. And I said, this is what someone told me. And I think we have to think about it a lot. There is no point in having all the skills, the communication ability, all that, maybe English, if you cannot adjust to the country. These are strong messages. So every now and then you need to have that conversation. And if you do that, yes, I think you could kind of face all these challenges.
Thanks, Doctor. You brought a real point in your about your walk. I think you brought a real good example. I have few questions on that, but I think you also, with your blessing, I got connected back with the technology. But there is a very excellent topic you brought, something Mullen talks about culture. He's talking about whether the organization cultures by the leader that he's enforcing or driving, can that be enforced in organization with the technology? Like you said, the technology challenge you have. Now, I'll go back to a particular example from what you said. Now, one side we want as a nation to grow and everyone to try to be entrepreneurs because we are lack of that. So we would like them to read and do more exercising in terms of technology using that. A flip side to that is that the disadvantage and the danger in that. And I know that in forums that you address, I've been how much passionate on technology you are, at the same time how much really careful and cautious you are on how children. So how do you strike a balance as a leader, particularly you more than Chandi? I don't think Chandi has any children. In the office. Okay. So how do you, because you have children, all in your, most of them. So how do you strike a balance between that? Because you brought it.
Yeah, one example is very recently, we studied a lot on mindfulness. Today the biggest problem we have is it's very difficult to get children to focus, and with all the influences around. So we did a lot of research and work on mindfulness. And there again, maybe I would have got the idea, but I worked with a team. And so spoke to teachers, found out who was kind of liking it. And like it or not, many young people came forward. So finally we kind of shortlisted 3 teachers each from the 4 schools. So we got a team of 12, worked with them, I sent them for some training programs, had constant meetings, and we thought we will introduce 5 minutes of mindfulness every day, every morning, right? Now to sell this to students, it was like, quite tough. Imagine introducing mindfulness to all these youngsters. But we spoke to them, we explained to them, and every morning now we have a 5-minute program, which is kind of, on the audio system. So all children go through this 5 minutes of mindfulness every day. It's worked out marvelous. Okay, and so it's like that. Basically, you got to understand. Religion, culture can be used a lot, and even our religious program, we do it actually after the interval. What we do is we give a mini teach to all 4 religions. So different children come, and narrate different things. Now you remember when we were in school, we used to have this Yuvaga, Sampava, and it was like every day it was the same thing. But here, maybe a child will come something from Dhammapada and then the translation in English. And different children do it on different days. So every child has to listen to all four religions. Okay, so they learn something, every day they learn something new, and different children do it. Now these little things, when you constantly do it, it gets into their system. Right? So, in as much as, tabs have to go to classrooms, you have to have electronic whiteboards, multimedia, all that. These things also, as organizations, we have to, make a kind of a concentrated effort to introduce these things so that we strike a balance.
Right. Chandi, I'll first share some experience and then come to the question. The question will be tough. For example, living in Fiji for many years, they have something called a drink that is made of root of a tree, and that actually is a time that all the directors, workers, laborers all sit down on the floor in a basin and it with a coconut shell they all drink with a coconut shell, nothing but a coconut shell, and everyone shares the same thing. And as soon as they had that sip, they basically clap. So in my first days in Fiji, I thought this is really, first of all, it's really health and safety issue. And in terms of taste, I'm sure that no one will get offended when I say this. If any Fijian watch, it's pathetic in taste. And I was wondering what the whole idea of this. And then I realized it's more than, later on, one of the directors shut up when I talk about public. Then I realized that it's more than the taste or what it is actually they share, and in that flow, laborers, board of directors, managers, all of them, same thought, drinking from the same coconut shell. So and also that they clap to say that we are together and there is no poison. So give me an example. Your employees, do you encourage coffee talks similar to that? Do you encourage corridor talks? And do you take feedback positively, or do you take it as a leader to listen the whistleblowing?
Okay, I think we have a system in Vietnam, and something similar happens during their break. There's a coffee day, obviously a coffee drinking nation today. They have something similar, but this probably is a good idea to start with my managers, maybe at a different level. But yes, even like I said, breakfast, lunch, even dinner, after some of our plants run 24 hours. There is no difference. Everybody is in the same canteen, everybody has the same meal. There is no difference between the senior and the junior levels, and it's a time that you interact, and actually you do get a lot of feedback. And coming to corridor, comments that you get within the corridors and coffee breaks, you have to listen to it. You can't dismiss it, even if it keeps repeating the same problem, because some might think it's solved, some may not. Like I said, I try to see the trivial problems that will probably come up, because I know the bigger problems are going to get addressed anyway. But sometimes in our operational level, we have people right down at the associate level who, like I said, maybe sambal or piece of bread or something bothers, and those things you have to address. If not, it starts building up into other problems. So yes, feedback is very important, and all of those are never dismissed. I can't say that we take everything positively, but whatever cannot be dismissed, and everything has to be addressed. So we do encourage that. And even corridor talk, I think we've been talking about it, I think, in our business for some time. What we are trying to encourage is corridor talk should be about your day-to-day KPIs and things like that, how that matters and how that affects, and whether each other's thoughts and processes can help you to achieve that. Because sometimes you find we get very departmentalized, trying to get these KPIs done. One department says I'm okay, the other department doesn't, but it's a whole chain that makes the business run. So in our corridor talk or whatever we say is in a casual chats, try to see where you can give the input for the other person, for them to achieve that, because actually what we see is that brings a different social aspect to them even after hours. Some people who do not interact have started to interact with them after hours, which I personally encourage for that to happen, because I think that's very key, because I think during work hours, especially at executive and other levels, you don't really get to socialize, or you don't really know what your colleague goes through, or maybe some other aspects of it. So that kind of builds up to that. That's like I said, we don't dismiss anything, but we do address all of those thoughts.
Thank you. So I think you shared some examples as well. So I'll go back to the questions coming online, and then I'll go to the audience again. So there's a good question coming. I think I'm trying to throw this to Dr. Alwis. How would you know when to change the culture? There are a couple of questions. I'll read it out. I think some of them may have answered. How would you know when to change the culture? That's a very important question, I think, particularly applying to you. And when it's needed, would that impact the organization's development? So I think the question is more about how do you know when to change, and how do you know it will impact?
So first of all, you need to be convinced that you need a change. And if there is a need, and if you feel that it's definitely going to benefit the organization, and especially at the end of the day, students, yes, you have to do it. And to do it is, I think, to kind of work with your colleagues and kind of win them over. You know, if you want to bring some new idea, obviously you got to get them to buy it. So first of all, I think you need to have that dialogue with members of staff, discuss that at length, because I believe in an organization, gone are the days where we can decide what is right and what is not. You got to kind of discuss, get the ideas, and you also need to develop the organization to a state where others feel that they can come and sometimes influence you, okay, and that they have a say in what happens in the organization. Mm-hmm. So I think it's that through that mechanism that if you want to implement some important change, that's how you should implement. That's what I feel.
So gone are the days that leader could forcefully implement something, right?
Yes, and I think if you want to do good, I don't think you should kind of you must detach yourself from the organization. I think one question that you had when you sent me the list of questions was about being a family business, okay? But you got to detach yourself from the organization and understand that organization is there forever. The others all are changing factors. So if you kind of work with that attitude, yes, I'm sure. Obviously, listening to others matters a lot.
Okay, so from Doctor's answer to that question, it drives to my next question to you, actually straight connecting. So the succession and sustainability of the organization. Chandi, now leaders are different type. They try to, of course, they have unique styles, but every organization is bigger than the leader. So is it something prove by doing that? How do you bring your successes? Are you planning? Are you doing that?
Yeah, I think we started on it about 3 years ago. I personally am getting professional help as to how to go about it, because I realized that with time and different drives that I expect somebody else to do, my expectations were getting very frustratingly slow, and then I want to speed things up, and then never really came through. So I was directed to talk to people at different levels, and I finally have somebody who's actually helping me out at a professional level. So we started actually analyzing literally your personal aspects of what your ethics and values, and these are the things that I think I started to measure in my team and said, okay, maybe this guy fits in, or maybe this lady fits in, or there are so many others who are below that who fits in. And we started actually, it was going to be homing in on 3 people, ended up doing 7. So because I think all of them has all of that that we were looking at, and a lot more that we started asking them questions, not directly but indirectly, as the next level that was going to come up and take the business. What would their thoughts and process? What is their ethics? What are their principles that will drive it? And actually, it has actually, I keep thinking to myself, what I've done is I've done a whole education system about my team, who wants a much more better organization than what I even envisaged. And actually, within the last maybe year or 12 months to 14 months, it has actually got very comfortable when we start talking about the successions. And now it's just a general discussion between the 5 of us now about how that is going to happen. And like I said, it's about taking a step out and letting some of that walk through process where it actually they start implicating things that they think would help and then guide them. So the succession is there. I guess like in anything else, we now have started to put some timelines. So once those timelines come through, I think we'll be at a very comfortable level.
So now, because in the importance of time, I'm trying to ask questions that would expect short answers from both of you. So taking further step on that, I know you drive innovation culture. I talk about the water-based printing changes, your solar power. As a leader, because that's innovation and invention culture. Do you drive it because it's that your passion, or you drive it because to win people? Tell us the truth.
Okay. Initially, it started, I think, because obviously we work for very high street brands, and they started with all this green peas and everything else. And then you have to, if you're going to run that kind of compliance, you have to sit down and start studying how that implication happens. And actually, I think I subscribe to Greenpeace. I attend all these other summits that other organizations have, and even at home, we encourage this to everybody. Even at home, how you recycle products to how you dispose waste, all of that actually started. And I think it was something that now it bothers your conscience that you might be actually harming the environment. And we, for the last few years, we've been practicing it without actually wanting to go for a certification in terms of green, because I say let's make that a culture. And actually only end of this year we will be going for a certification, which is actually not going to be any problem at all, because the whole organization now runs on. So all our organizations actually run on that, so all the plants. The answer to your thing is, I truly believe in it. And everybody down the line has now, have made a huge contribution in terms of eliminating a lot of our waste. And including, I think for the audience, I think we've started, Sri Lanka is one of the few places in the world where most of our plants, we literally have zero discharge of water. Since none of the water actually goes out of our drains, that is actually what they call should be able to be consumed. And we have testing houses, ITS, and all of that. We give them every month. They come unannounced at any time of the night, and they take water out of your drain that is coming out and they test it. So including face wash, even at home, face wash detergents, all of that has to be at different pH levels that it can actually you can just go to a paddy field and it doesn't actually make any difference to the environment. So Sri Lanka has been one of those countries in terms of our apparel industry and I think other industries that we have been driving it, and we actually have been certified. So if you go on some other brands, you will find our name there and then saying these guys have actually lived up to it. But now we are going for higher certification because that's the way that you will recognize, and I think now the team has to be endorsing a part of this.
Okay. So Doctor, again a quick question before I come to the end. Are you the center part of your culture? Are you the power that or honestly, are you driving or organization now drives?
I hope I'm not, but I think the fact is still, I think I play a fairly large role, but the good thing is it's changing very fast. And there are many people who kind of put their hands up, and many in the organization have come forward and taken more and more responsibility, which is great. So which kind of hopefully leaves more time for me to kind of look at the wider world and look at things that could kind of benefit in a broader sense. So the answer to that is yes. Yes, maybe at the moment, but think it's changing very fast.
Thank you so much for being very honest. And one last chance for a very quick question before we end, because just want to give, I have got few questions, but I don't think time permits, but interacting perspective. Anyone wants to ask any question?
Now, in terms of culture, when new people join into the company and even the existing people, the general culture that the company follows might be violated sometimes with the employees by different employees. So in these specific cases, how do you tackle it, and to what extent you tolerate it, and how can you motivate them to be more attached to and more driven towards the company culture?
Well, basically, when new people come, I think we should consider that also as an opportunity. If people come and if they are very much the same, I don't think they bring any value to the organization. So if they come up with new ideas and whatnot, you must embrace them. You must welcome them, and you try to kind of learn something. But you can have the extreme cases, where they kind of try to make a huge kind of tries to make a lot of change. At very senior level, when we recruit, we tell them, look here, first few months, take your time, don't rush, listen to people and study. Okay, but you can't tell that to all the people. So invariably, many of them obviously understand and fall in line. Okay, if you have extreme cases, obviously, then they themselves realize that this is not the place for them. Okay, but overall, I don't think there is any point if you want to kind of hire people, right? And obviously, when you hire, you want to obviously get better and better staff. And if you are not kind of if you want them to kind of do just what you do, right? I don't think there is any point. So you got to have that open mind. That's what I feel.
Right. Maybe the last question, but I'll ask a very short, maybe 10 seconds, 20 seconds statement of, rather than asking what's the final message, normally I ask what's the final message to the audience, but I'll ask a different question. In one word, what would you, or 2 words maximum, what would be your staff tells about you, doctor? What characteristics they would pick, or what traits? I
think they believe that I'm a bit of a workaholic, and that they expect, I think, me to all the time bring in some new changes and maybe having some new thing happening in the organization, which is good and bad, because if the staff think that they are in an organization which is happening in the youngsters' terminology, as well as where there is development, that's a good thing because they look forward to it. So probably that's something that they expect, to be serving in a growing organization, because I think even members of staff who left us, I think they all to a great extent agree that our organization has created that learning culture, that this is a place where you can grow. So creating that mindset within your staff is important, and I believe that's something that has been very helpful. Thank you, Doctor. What about Chandi, you? What would be the couple of words that they will tell about? I think whatever you can share with the audience.
I think that's a very true statement. I think if you look at what the team or the staff, the colleagues would work with you at different levels. The driving factor for me has obviously been getting up in the morning and saying, okay, today it's going to be different, we're going to do something different, let's look at where the world has gone, something like that. So in that aspect, trying to bring something new, I think they will always expect a leader to bring that, and we as leaders are also waiting for the team also to bring something new to the table. So and I think if you look at maybe a comment that they would say is he's always waiting for something new to happen in the organization. I would say, yeah, that's my expectation as well as yours. And also, like Dr. said, it has to be. I hope that they will make a conscious comment that it is a place that they can grow, that their values and their streams of career are nurtured and looked after beyond our term in office. And because I think there has to be that sense of belonging, and I hope my team will endorse the fact that I'm actually there, making that future for them, and obviously going into a larger and a better organization that can adapt as humans can adapt to the changing environment.
Thank you so much. So it's coming to the end of the session. So in conclusion, if I say three things coming out of these two leaders, one is about culture is all about the organization. From the point you walked into that, from the walls to the corporate colors to the leaders and how the decisions are made. Number two is that change is evident, and the culture also needs changes, and the leaders who have to adopt that and adapt has to demonstrate that they are doing it. And the third thing is that you have to get feedback from your staff, your members of the organization, to make a performance-oriented organization. End of the day, all businesses, we want to perform. So that's the message. And thanks for the coming here, for the audience here. And thanks to all the people who watch online, offline. And please look at our Facebook, like us. If you really want to follow us, please follow us. And also next session will be on the Facebook soon. And I'm thanking the Coffee Bean for co-hosting this venue continuously for us. And finally, follow us. We'll come with the next session. Before we end, I hope I give the right one to Doctor. I have a token of appreciation for Dr. Alwis. Thank you so much, Doctor, for coming.
Thank you.
And it's actually a token of appreciation for you. And same way, Chandi. It's hard to open your one, but it's for Chandi. Thank you so much, Chandi. And thank you so much.